Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Penny for My Thoughts. I have my tea here. Today, I want to speak about a term that I've always heard, and some of you have always heard, and that's just always been around. Blood is thicker than water. And I want to give my take on that and how I feel about it and what my perspective is on that. Let me break it down. When they say blood is thicker than water, if you don't know what it means, it basically means, your family is more important. You, you know, take your family side over a stranger or somebody that's not related to you or blood to you. You have to be loyal to family first at all times, whether you know them or not. It's blood, so it's thicker, meaning it's more important than a stranger or a friend or whichever. But my take on that is I don't feel like that is 100% true. I feel like that has levels to it because there are, to me, there are some family that are, they're your family, but they're not good for you. They're, whether whether you're, they're a distant family member, you don't really know them, or whether they're very, very close to you. Some of them are not good for you. The things they do aren't good. And I feel like that is almost like being, a yes man to family, just or the things they do, or even the things that they do to you, or maybe the things they do to other people, or crime or whichever. you know just because you're related doesn't mean that you have to be their yes man, that you have to agree with everything they do. And some family, like I say, is just not good for you. Some of them are, maybe they're into super illegal activity, and they want to drag you in it, and they say, hey, well, we're family. And that's like, no, because if that's going to put your life, or put you, or your own personal family in your household, or whatever, like your kids or whatever, in jeopardy, and and it's supposed to be you know blood, and you're supposed to agree with everything, then I don't feel like that's correct. Or in some instances, if you have a family member that is just doing you wrong, or just doing stuff that you don't want to be no part of. Or maybe you have a friend, and the friend is there for you, the friend treats you right, the friend is supportive to you, and all that other type of stuff. And I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, I'm going to go with my family because blood is thicker than water? Or are you going to go with the person that is better for you? Better for you mentally, better for you spiritually, better for you just personal wise, that you can actually talk to. There's some family that you cannot talk to at all. They'll spread your business, give you bad advice, are jealous of you, whether it's in your face or outside of your face. And, those things happen. Not saying, not making it negative and saying, okay, you shouldn't trust family, but those things happen. There are some families that they just do not, mix. Or certain situations where you're in a situation with your friend, you're in a situation with your family, and your family is like, oh, well, you should just take my side because blood is thicker than water. And it's like, no. If you're going to put me in a bad predicament, if you're going to constantly put me in drama, or if you're going to constantly do stuff that's illegal, or whichever, my friend isn't doing that. So in this case, that blood thicker than water terminology doesn't fall. I feel like that's, being, just saying, okay, just because we're related, you just have to be my yes man. And I don't agree with that. And there's times where not even just friends, there are times where complete strangers will treat you better and do stuff for you better than your own family. There are times, where if you trust a friend more than you'll trust your family members, a friend that you've been friends with for years or whichever, and you know their character, and you know what type of lifestyle they live, and you're just like, hey, I trust this person more than I trust my own family. And that's where blood is thicker than water just doesn't fall. you know what is better for you? And I have a saying: I would rather drink clean water than to be around dirty blood any day. Any day. I would drink clean water than to be around tainted, dirty blood that's going to taint me and make me sick and all that any day. Because, if we're going to go on, it's the principle. And I feel like principle has levels too. You can't, if a family member, wants you to do things that you don't want to do, that you're totally against, and your friend or a stranger wouldn't make you do that, then blood is not thicker than water. I mean, yeah, it's thick, but it's tainted. The water's clean, the blood is tainted. And there's times where you hear stories of like strangers just doing things for people that they don't even know. You get stranded on the side of the road, and you can call all your family members, and some of them won't come. Some of them you can't rely on. Some of them, they just in their own stuff. Some of them, they just, hey, I just don't feel like coming to get you. You're stranded, and a stranger come and help you, or you call a friend come and help you. Those people aren't blood, but they're treating you better than your blood. So that's another instance of the blood and thicker than water thing just can't fly by. There is times where you have very, very good friends that are like family to you. They're literally like family to you. And it's, it doesn't, even if you don't have the best family and, stuff like that, and you can feel bad about it, but you think to yourself like, hey, I got a good village of friends. We didn't come from the same house, or we didn't grow up from the same parents or whatever, but they treat me good. They're there for me. I'm there for them. My own family isn't that way, or maybe one family member isn't that way, or this stranger, or whichever, is like a mother to me, like a neighbor or whatever. I've heard of those things. I've heard of people not having grandparents or whatever, and they it can be a neighbor or something like that, and just treat them, and they're like a grandparent to them, or like a mother to them, or that saying, mother from another. Those things happen because sometimes family just isn't it. Blood just isn't it sometimes. And it's just not healthy to be around certain blood. It's physically, it's not healthy, because there's some people that they get around their blood and all they do is fight immediately. All they do is argue. It's always drama all the time, and they can get around their friends, and it's not, that is total opposite. Or strangers or whichever, or just, and I just feel like just having a village, whether they're blood or not, is it's better. Who's better for you? Who's better for you mentally? Who's better for you to be around? Who's going to encourage you? Is it your blood in some instances, or is it the water? And I'm not saying, like, everybody's family is like this or everybody's, but we all know, even if you have the best family, even if you have, there's some that you just don't mix with. There's some that you stay away from. There are some that you keep your kids away from. There are some that you won't even leave your dog or your cat or your bird around. And, you just know. Like, no one's perfect and no one has the most best, perfect family or whichever, And sometimes, you'll be like, hey, I wouldn't let this person babysit my dog or leave my kids around and their family. But, the friend or the person that you've developed a very, very good trusting relationship with, that helps you out and you know what their character is, that might be a more trustworthy person. Now, I'm not saying, because I know there's instances where people leave their kids around, I'm not saying just put your 100% trust in people either. I feel like you shouldn't 100% your trust in nobody, whether they're a family, a friend, a stranger, whatever. Not 100%, because at the end of the day, we're all people, and people make mistakes, and people do things, and they make bad decisions. I don't feel like you should put 100% trust in not one person at all. I feel like you should put your 100% trust in God. That's what you put your 100% trust in. Whether it doesn't matter what the person's character is, if they're blood, if they're water, whatever. To put 100% trust in a person, no. You have to give you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, yes, but you also have to be realistic and say, hey, even though I trust this person, even though, we've been friends for years, even though they've been nice, things can turn at any point. People fall, and this can be blood or water or strangers or whichever. We are human beings. We are people. Make mistakes. Some of the most loving people have turned into some of the most evil. So that's why, it's a two-way street. No, don't put your 100% trust in any person. Put your 100% trust in God. And I know there are people that don't believe in God, and that's fine, because you never know somebody's situation. And you're also able to make your own decisions. But me personally, I don't put my 100% trust in nobody. I don't. No family, no friend, no stranger. And I have friends that I've been friends with for years. But, they're also human too. Anybody can make anybody, anything can make anybody fall out or whatever. There are some people that are complete saints, and they've just been just always right and everything else. And you hear stuff like this on the news, and then it just blindsides people, and they're like, well, this person wasn't this person, and I thought I really trusted them and everything else. That's because you put your 100% trust in them. You have to be able to give leeway of, look, things can turn at any point. At any point. I've heard, and I know I'm not the only, I've heard so much different things, whether it's the news or whether it's old news, new news, back in the day, whatever, of people just, whether family too, whatever, just everything was fine, and then out of nowhere, or a person, really had their 100% trust in a person, and they thought they were really close, and out of nowhere, They find out something, or out of nowhere they fall out about something. They could have been friends for 50 years, and out of nowhere, it's a secret or this and that. That's why you don't put your 100% trust in a person. Whether blood or water. And it also goes with, and like I said, it also goes with, not just being, a yes man for anybody too. You ain't got to be a yes man for blood, but you ain't got to be a yes man for the water either. I mean, if you feel like something is wrong, if you feel like, they're not doing something right, say it. And if they got a problem with it, oh well. It's this I feel like that's blood thicker than water is code language. Like, okay, you got to stick to a code. And you got to be put in a box. And you can't have any other thoughts about what they do just because of blood. This is just my perspective on it. I'm a very big perspective person. You can't have any argument about what they do because you're at a code. I mean, and I've heard of instances of you have a family member that may not get along with your friend, a friend that has always been with you, always been there for years or whatever, and the family member don't mix with the friend, and then or the friend is like, hey, this family member is really bad for you. Well, who are you gonna choose? You're gonna tell the friend that has been there for you, that you trusted, that has always supported you and everything. You're gonna tell the friend, no, you can't tell me anything about, because that's my family and blood is thicker than water. Even though that family member is very bad for you, always have you in drama, or, will never do, or always probably borrowing money from you all the time and never pay you back, just using you and everything else. And the friend that is not blood is telling you, like, I don't like this person because the way they treat you. Even though I'm your friend, I love you. But your family member is treating you, and this is the reason why I don't like them. This is the reason why, I don't want to be around them. And the family member knows that. And they tell you, oh, well, that's just your friend. We're blood, right? That's why I say that cold blood is thicker than water. It just doesn't fall, because who's better for you in certain instances? And I'm just talking about scenarios. This is nothing like personal or whatever, but I'm just saying scenarios of things that I've ever seen, maybe on the inside, maybe also on the outside, or like things on, the news, or even on my own family or extended family or friends, or just stuff just around town or whatever. Or just stuff that I know that is happening in different people's lives. Who do you trust the most? Do you trust a friend that has always been there for you? And again, we're not talking about 100% trust. So anytime I say trust, I'm not saying 100%, because remember I said you don't put your 100% trust in no one. You put your 100% trust in your creator, because your creator knows what's best for you. And whether you believe God or Buddha, whatever, we all have creators. So, when I say that, just know, disclaimer, it is not the 100% trust. Maybe 70%, 85%. You gotta scale it out for, room for the person to be a person. Because in that same situation, that same friend that's better for you at that time than your family at the time, that same friend can turn too. And those things happen. So that's why I say, when I say trust in, that does not mean 100% trust. But when you comparing, the family that is, totally bad for you, and you know, compared to the friend that's not bad for you, who do you choose? And I know there are some people that are conflicted about that. They're like, okay, well, I just want to just go with, my family because this person is my family. Also, the confliction also comes in where you got other family members that are like, oh, well, why would you choose your friend's side? We're all family and this and that. And usually those other people that are saying that are just as toxic as that family member that you don't need to be dealing with. Not saying all the time, because there's a lot of times where people on the outside looking in, but sometimes they are just as toxic as them. And birds of a feather flock together. So, you know, just toxic and messy and just not thinking clearly of, hey, what's best for you. They're just thinking of, well, you're being this way, you're always, with your friend or this or that or whatever, or and it don't even have to be a friend, it could be, a coworker or whatever, just a village, period. They can feel like, okay, well, you're always taking their side. Well, this is, we're blood, and you're going against your family and stuff like that. Like you hear this type of stuff, talk shows, whatever, stuff like that. Now, talk shows, some of those things I don't really feel like be real sometimes. But when we talk about real life, these things happen in real people's lives. There are people that their whole family will go against them sometimes just because they don't choose the side of one family member that is toxic to them. And usually they're toxic too. And, they don't understand it. Well, why do you always take, this person's side? Because they're better for you. That's why. You know, they encourage you. Whereas where your blood, doesn't encourage you, and they're trying to use you all the time, and they just don't care about you. And, they get mad and say, well, we're supposed to be blood, and well, blood is thicker than water. And that's that code language of, you know, I feel like that's saying, well, hey, you got to be my yes man because, you got to agree with everything I do. You got to agree with, how I treat you and whichever, just because we're blood. Or, I've heard of like people just doing very illegal things. And, there are people like, hey, I'm not, you did that and it's illegal and very wrong, and they say something about it, and then it's like, okay, well, why'd you say that? Blood is thicker than water. Then there's also go in with the other code of no snitching thing. It's like certain things, there is a subcategory. There's codes that have codes, and you don't have to agree with what your blood did just because they're your blood. I've heard of things where your blood, they have gotten angry or jealous at a person having a relationship with, you know, a friend or whatever too close, and they've done something to the friend. I've heard of these things where it's like a possession thing. Well, you're supposed to be my blood, and it doesn't even it's not even with distance family. I've heard it with, mother, father, son, daughter, close cut. All these things happen. And I'm just saying, some of those codes just don't fly by. Those old fashioned codes, and I say old fashioned because that saying has been around for years. Blood is thicker than water. It don't matter what walk of life you've been. It doesn't matter what your race, your color, whatever. I've heard it in all different scenarios, in all different, families. Well, blood is thicker than water. And, you know, that I feel like has negative aspects to it, because you're saying, hey, I have to agree with everything you do. I have to only agree with you. I have to only be around you. I have to, only trust you. Disclaimer, not 100% trust, and not put, trust in, the person that's there for me, the person that encourages me. I've heard of, like, you know, people not having the best parents, and stuff like that, and a younger person meets an older person, and they become like a father or a mother to them, and their actual father and mother is mad, and they're like, well, hey, why do you treat them like this and that, because blood is thicker than water. And you're like, no, you weren't good for me, you never was good for me. This person I've developed a relationship with for years. They're there for me. They help me when I need it. They encourage me. They give me not only, physical encouragement to lift me up, but they lift me up spiritually and mentally. And if you feel a type of way about that, and you want to use that code of blood is thicker than water, that just doesn't fly by in this particular scenario. And you know it just, and there's people that have been adopted, or stuff like that, that also falls into that. And there's things where they have a better relationship with their adopted parent or whatever it's not. Then the real one comes in, they're like, well, you don't have anything to, because you know and even when, and let me not just say adoption, even with that, it depends on the scenario, because everything is situational. If you had an adopted parent, and you were taken away from them because of just toxic and whatever and this and that, then that's a whole nother scenario. So when I say things, I want everyone to know that I'm talking about situational things. It's not a cookie cutter. Every puzzle don't fits everything. So disclaimer, because I don't want it to get misconstrued. But you know it just I just don't feel like that fits everything. I feel like it's situational. The blood is thicker than water. And every time, most of the time when I hear it, it always is like in some type of like negative scenario or something of like, and it's always like, okay, either the family member that you have a problem with, or maybe that's close to them. It's always like a, okay, not in a positive aspect of, hey, we're blood, stick to you, support me, support this because we're blood, is I've always heard as some type of negative thing of like, okay, well, you have to just agree with everything I do, don't, I'm not going to acknowledge that I've hurt you, or I'm not going to acknowledge, that I've done this to you, and I'm upset of, you're taking the side of the other person, which is actually better for you if we think about it. I've always heard it as some like, you know negative notation. Not saying that's what it is, because, like I say, it's situational. But, me personally, and I'm not saying that that's just always, always. No, no. And even if I did always hear it, me personally, I have my own perspective. I know that everything isn't negative. There are millions of people out in the world, millions of people out in the country, the world, everything. Every situation is different. And even if I've always heard it, in a bad situation, I know that that is not always like it is. I don't know everybody. I don't know everybody in the world, whether they lived or they're not on earth anymore or whichever. But, as people, we all go through things. And I'm just giving, my perspective on the word, and me feel like it's like, a code that should be situational. I just wanted to come here. This is another penny for my thoughts. And again, like I always say, Keep your mental healthy. Thank you.